What's your name?
Django.
Can you spell it?
Django. The D is silent.
I know.
Hello and welcome to Movies and Tea. I'm your host as always, Edward Jones, and joining me of course is my co-host, Miss Kim Lowe.
Hello.
Tonight we continue our re-evaluation of Quentin Tarantino's filmography, as tonight's episode looks at Django Unchained, the remake of sorts of the classic Sergio Corbucci western Django. Here, seeing Tarantino not only getting a chance to pay homage to his love of spaghetti westerns by giving us a southern rather than a western, but also flipping roles around and bringing in elements of movies like Mandango and Goodbye Uncle Tom to create a truly unique western experience that not only pays homage to the likes of Peckinpah and Corbucci, but at the same time really manages to be something quite unique itself. Kim, this was the one that I think we both had our reservations about.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a big fan of westerns. Like, I've watched probably like 3 westerns in my life. It's not exactly my first choice of movies, and then the runtime is fairly long, and I'm not a big fan of Jamie Foxx. So a lot of different reasons of why.
We seem to be hitting on a lot of the same things already.
So I'm pretty much I went into this one really trying to be optimistic about it. It's a first time watch, so I really was hoping that it'd be something kind of like Inglourious Basterds, which I don't think it was.
I know what you mean. I'm not a huge fan of the westerns either, but the fact that at this period of his filmography he made 2 westerns back to back was hardly something to be thrilled about. And certainly, as like you said already, I'm not a big Jamie Foxx fan. I think he was the worst thing in Baby Driver. And I don't know what it is about Jamie Foxx. I just never really gotten into him as an actor. Same as Don Cheadle. There's something about these actors I just never really got on with. So,
like, talking about that, I mean, I don't have a problem with Don Cheadle. I think he's okay. He was in this TV series that I enjoyed quite a bit. I forgot the name of it already.
House of Lies?
House of Lies. Yeah, with the.
Oh god, I couldn't stand that bloody show.
I thought it was okay.
I thought it was
pretty
smug.
Fun. But it was meant to be that way. Like the old smugness.
Right.
It was all meant. I thought it fit his role pretty well. But Jamie Foxx is really different because I think that he's been in the business for so long, and I can never remember what he's been in. And I know that he's so big, and it sounds horrible that I don't remember what he's been in. Because he's such a big actor, right? Like, he's been in so many things. And yet, I don't know if it's because he's just kind of like a blind spot in my, like, the films I've watched, or it's just that his roles always seem like maybe the roles that he's plays a bigger role in, I haven't seen. I don't know. Because, like you said, Baby Driver, I thought the movie was okay, but I do know that he's in it, but what did he exactly do? Like, I don't remember right now.
He was one of the bank robbers.
Yeah, no, I know he was one of the bank robbers, but I mean, like, the actual part of it, right? Because I know the the driver part, and I remember his bits, and then I remember the girls that are in it, and yeah, but I just don't remember I just don't remember a lot of it, and I think that that's the thing is that. And it's not like it changed my mind, right? Like, Django Unchained was a pretty big movie, and as with most, Tarantino movies. But when I finished this movie, I think that as I was going through it, I think that the best part of the movie was Christoph Waltz, and that's my basic idea of how I feel about it in general.
It's hard to follow you on that point. Christoph Waltz is pretty fantastic in this, and you don't really blame Tarantino for wanting to work with Waltz again, especially after he pretty much stole Inglourious Basterds with his performance as the Jew Hunter. So to see really him find a role for him again, and it's another astounding performance that he gives here as Django's mentor of sorts, this dentist turned bounty hunter called Dr. King Schultz. who's super charismatic, walks into every scene knowing exactly what he needs to do. I mean, there's a scene early on in the film where they go into a town and he shoots the sheriff and then walks calmly out in like the whole town basically having guns in him to point out the fact that the sheriff is in fact this wanted criminal and not this hard-working sheriff that they all came to elect him as. So.
I think that, I think the thing is that Django Unchained starts so fun because it's really Christoph Waltz. The moment he starts, he comes driving up in his little truck with a tooth just swinging on the top, right? And
yeah,
and he turns out to be this really type of unpredictable type of character. The way he talks, the way he acts, and the goal of what he wants, like who he's looking for. And then when you get to, like the town, where to him, he doesn't have these American standards about, slavery and all that sort of thing. So he's okay with it. He bought this man. This man's going to help him accomplish what he needs as for his bounty hunter, to collect this bounty. And then so he doesn't mind, right? And then everybody sees it as such like this big deal. And he just kind of like ignores all of it. And I mean, that whole town scene was just great because it set such a great tone for the movie in the beginning. It was just like, he was like, okay, well, you should go get the sheriff. And then the sheriff comes and then he shoots him. And then he's like, now you can go get the marshal. And he's just like instructing people to do stuff. And he's the visitor in town. And I think that the way that he commands the role is really like, just so fantastic.
Oh, definitely so. He's certainly a really fun character to have in this, and it really plays off well against Jamie Foxx's Django, who's a very sort of stone-faced killer. He's really taps into like that Eastwood vibe of like the man with no name. When you look at this character, and I mean, I love the fact that as well the film opens with the same title music as the original Django. So in the original Django, we have this theme music as you see him, Django walking through the desert as he's dragging this coffin in. We open in 1858 Texas with the same theme music, and it's so great. It's so like, oh. But obviously in Tarantino's world, Django's a slave turned bounty hunter who's on a mission to get his wife Brunhilde back after the two were separated and sold for cheap after they attempted to escape from the plantation they were working on. And this, I mean, obviously, whenever you have anything involving slavery, it's going to spark a lot of controversy, and having it set in the Deep South, I think, only sort of further antagonizes people. But as Jamie Foxx says, it's the sort of movie you're supposed to be upset about. And I think Tarantino certainly has. Well, I mean, he certainly has no fear of the N-word, for sure. And I think some 100+ times that it's muttered throughout. And I know when his film came out, there was a lot of, like, criticism. It's sort of like, oh, they're constantly like, using it. It's like, yes, you're in the Deep South in the 18th century. Slavery is legal. The N-word is pretty rife. Which always astounds me when people start applying modern-day values to historical pictures. It's just, like, the most stupidest thing. It's like, do you not, like, have any like historical context for anything you're complaining about? Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying with we to look at that the opening half of this movie, and it is a lot of fun just seeing how the pair are basically going around and collecting bounties and engaging in exciting shootouts and things. And we have that scene as well with the regulators, the Ku Klux Klan, because obviously Ku Klux Klan came in after the Civil War and were 2 years before the Civil War here, so they're actually regulators, and they just happen to have like the bed sheets over their head, and we have that great scene where they're complaining about the eye holes being too small and the fact they can't ride with hoods on their head. I know some people like criticize, again, it's all like you're making fun of the Klan. It's like, what, we're supposed to play the Klan in a serious light? It always confused me, but no, as I say, it's just something about that first half that sort of loses its way really towards the end really, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact Christoph Waltz is removed before the end credits have rolled. It
definitely could be that, and I think that it just really changes in the sense, like, I don't Like, I think that, you make a point about the whole N-word being said. And yes, it's true that it is used a lot. For me, it bothers me a little bit. But I think it's just the fact that the movie isn't meant... Like, it's supposed to bother you. Like, because, you're faced with a world where there's slavery. And these slaves are being treated in very inhumanly ways. And it's meant to be uneasy to watch. But at the same time, I don't know. I think it's just, I think that, when you talk about the movie itself and how it's kind of like making, you're kind of not in a serious light where they're doing whatever they're doing. But that's just Tarantino's style. Whenever he, just look at how he treated Inglourious Basterds, which is like an alternate history. And it's not, you can't, like, the movie's not meant to be taken very seriously. And Hitler is a garbage person in history, pretty much, right? So it kind of goes without saying, like, without making things too, dramatic. Because, I mean, if you wanted to watch something dramatic about, say, like, for Inglourious Basterds, you wanted to watch something dramatic about Hitler, you go and watch Schindler's List. You don't have to go and watch Tarantino. Tarantino isn't meant to be that way. He's meant to kind of treat everything in kind of like this very sarcastic, poking fun, over the top type of tone. And that's exactly what he does with Django Unchained as well, I think. Because all the characters are super over the top. Like, I think no one beats over the top as much as, like, Leonardo DiCaprio's character. I thought his character was super irritating. Like, I like Leonardo DiCaprio, but his character was, woo! I mean... I had issues with it.
I think if he had not been played with a southern accent, I probably would have had more issues. But there's something so charming about the southern accent, especially with DiCaprio. I mean, obviously he replaced Calvin Candy, the owner of the Candyland plantation, who also has a sideline in Mandingo fighting, which is basically where slaves fight to the death. And this is one of his sidelines that he runs. Now, the actual idea of slaves being forced to fight each other to the death is more of a fantastical thing, and it's really just Tarantino paying homage to the 1975 film Mandingo. Mandingo, that that subplot is actually put in. I mean, obviously slaves are very valuable properties, so you're not just going to have them beating each other up for just casual entertainment, it seems, unless you're like super rich, I guess. But as I said, it still would be something that wouldn't happen. But here it makes an interesting subplot. It gives the character Calvin Candy that more evil edge, because obviously in this location, I mean, we're surrounded by slave owners, and so everyone's sort of evil on some level. So you need someone who's sort of like going to raise up him, and it's like, what's the next most evil thing we can do? And it's like, oh, we have a slave owner who organizes, like, who pits men to fight to the death against each other for his own amusement. And it's also a great way to work in the cameo that we have from Franco Nero, who speaks to, we see as the Italian fight promoter. He has the conversation with Django at the bar, and he's sort of like, oh, it's Django, the D is silent, and he's like, I know. And it's like, yes, you know, because you played the original Django. That's why you know. But I'm always excited to see Franco Nero. He was also the dictator in Die Hard 2. If you need another reference point.
Okay, that's a better reference point.
He's also in a bunch of like ninja movies that Columbus and Goem made, like Enter the Ninja, which were just awful. But they're very sort of like the Western idea of what a ninja is, rather than like what you would see in like Hong Kong cinema. The actual violence in the film, I mean, how did that sort of play for yourself? Because we have like that really brutal sort of like fight sequence that we're obviously introduced to Calvin Candy with, and then we have scenes such as the shootout at the Candyland Ranch, which are just so over the top. Mm-hmm. It's a completely different departure. So Tarantino really sort of switches back and forth between like realistic violence and then just super hyper violence when he has like one of his big sort of like shootouts, which I think after watching Fistful of Dollars earlier in this week, because everyone was like, the Man with No Name trilogy is just like one of these essential westerns you have to see, and I just couldn't get on with that movie at all. And I think whenever you've seen people getting shot and they're just like no blood at all, and then you watch this and just people just like geysers of blood everywhere. I mean, there's moments of red mist throughout that shootout sequence. It's insane. I forgot how violent that scene is.
I don't know. I think that after watching so many Tarantino movies, it's almost expected that it's going to be like that. And I think that, when we talk about it like that, I think that's the thing with why I didn't like Django Unchained as much, is that it felt so expected. Like, everything was expected. There was no surprises. All the characters were super predictable. There was no character that kind of like made you really on edge that they're going to be super unpredictable, or there's no like, oh, this is how it's going to turn out. You know that this scene is going to be super over the top type of deal, or this scene is going to be, how it's going to end is going to be some big, shootout, crazy massacre or whatever of everybody. And but I mean, the violence is there for sure. I mean, it's nothing that, I think it's just it's nothing unexpected when you're talking about Tarantino. It's exactly how I feel about Tarantino when I first started watching him, and the exact reason why there are times I don't enjoy his movies. I don't know. I mean, I think that some of the scenes are okay. I think that in terms of what it's trying to do, I think that when you talk about the Mandingo fight, I think that that fight was really intense in terms of like the sound effects that you use and what's going on and all that sort of stuff. Even
that was really tough to watch. Still,
even the Brittle, was it the Brittle brothers? Was that it? Whatever plantation, the cotton, was it the cotton plantation? I can't remember.
Yeah,
that one was also kind of crazy, because I think it was the first one where you really had a lot of I mean, the beginning scene was also kind of intense, like when they were killing the people bringing the slaves and stuff. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think the violence was pretty on par with what you'd expect from a Tarantino movie.
Definitely so. I mean, there's just something about, like, I'd say when you get into that big shootout scene, you got the guy, Candy's like right man who's sort of like caught in the crossfire, and he's sort of being used as a human shield, and you got the bomb falling sound of like one of the bullets, like as it hones in on his leg, and it's all like noises. It's like, what the most off-putting part about that is the fact that for the soundtrack he uses a Nas track which uses samples from the film, which is really weird when you're watching someone engage in a shootout and you've got their quotations in the background. So it just was was kind of jarring, and something I only sort of picked up on this time. But as I said, it's not my favorite of the Tarantino movies, and I still can't really sort of place aware whether it's just the fact I'm not a huge fan of westerns, or I'm just not a big Jamie Foxx fan generally. I mean, originally they bounced around names like Michael K. Williams, who played Omar on The Wire, and Will Smith at one point was like a front runner. But Jamie Foxx was cast mainly because of the fact that Jamie Foxx rides his own horse in the film. He does all his own riding himself, and that Tarantino just saw him as having this real sort of like cowboy air to him that Will Smith didn't. So there's a valuable lesson: learn how to ride horses if you're going to make westerns. And I mean, obviously, Jamie Foxx is supposed to be like this cool bounty hunter cowboy. Even here, he can't really pull off that blue suit. That's the thing which always jars me about this film. It's just like that bloody blue suit. And I mean, it's obviously inspired by Thomas Gainsborough's 1770 oil painting, The Blue Boy. That's where they took that look from. And I love as well the fact that when you look at Big Daddy, who's played by Don Johnson, he's in a white suit because obviously it's a reference to his white suit on Miami Vice. So there's lots of fun things with the costume in this picture. I mean, we get to see Zoe Bell's tracker early on in the film, and I thought she just turned up late into like that third quarter, but she actually turns up earlier as you go into the Candyland Ranch, and you've got the guy who's up in the tree with the dogs. You see her, and she's got like the red bandana. Now, originally she was going to pull down the bandana. It's going to reveal an absent jaw, but that didn't actually make it into the cut, which is kind of a shame because it sounds like a really cool visual image there. But I mean, it's always exciting to see Zoe Bell, even though she's not particularly given much to do in this film.
Yeah. I mean, I think you know, when you talk about it like this, I really feel like if I knew more about Westerns and just like all these little reference points you're talking about, then the movie would mean a little bit more. There's so many of these things that are just, I don't know. Like, you're mentioning all these movies and you're like, I'm just like, I don't know. You know, in my life, I watched like 2 Eastwood Westerns in my life, you know? Like, yeah. I don't know these things. and to me, that's why maybe that's the main thing is Tarantino movies are so focused around every single movie seems to be paying homage to something that he really likes. So he adds a lot of different type of reference points in it. So it really depends how much of these reference points are able to coincide with your own knowledge to kind of like, you know, find all these little Easter eggs and really kind of see all the little things he's trying to do.
I mean, yes, I mean, these things obviously in there, but at the same time, it's not like when you watch Kill Bill and you do the Easter egg spots. It's not as fun for me as that, and I think it's just purely because I haven't got a huge love for westerns as a genre. Ironically, I really love Eastern westerns, so things like Millionaire Express, Let the Bullets Fly, Shijinku Western Django. Those whenever you have like the good, the bad, and the weird, I love those takes on the western genre. But for some reason, like the traditional western movies, like The Searchers or like the spaghetti westerns, I just never really got on with for whatever reason. So
I don't know. To me, westerns have always felt like this really slow paced type of like.
That's what it is, isn't it?
And you know, like we're gonna talk about Hateful Eight next. And I remember watching Hateful Eight the first time, and the first half was very like traditional western, and it was so slow, and you're just like. I remember being in the theater, like, bored to tears. And I was just like, oh my god. I kept looking at my watch and I was like, oh my goodness, when is this going to end? When is this moving on? And then I'm just yawning and waiting for something exciting to happen.
It doesn't help the fact that this film's so long. I mean, I think Tarantino's the fact he's given this ability just to stretch his films out because of who he is. As a director, he's got this sort of legacy of the fact he was also one of the golden boys of the Weinsteins. So the fact is that he could just do what the hell he wanted, really, because he has these huge outlandish visions, and somehow we all buy into them. He makes things that like we're not really considered like kung fu movies and gangster flicks just suddenly become really hip again once Tarantino's had his grasp on it. And I was surprised we didn't see like a whole bunch of westerns following on from this film and like Hateful Eight, to be honest. Because certainly when like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction came out, you had like all these awful like cash-ins or people like trying to work in like pop culture into their movies and stuff, and you would have like people like doing these most cliche like things trying to imitate Tarantino's style. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, this film wasn't originally going to cross over with the RZA's martial arts film, The Man with the Iron Fist. Right. There was going to be a scene where there's a scene in Man with the Iron Fist where the RZA's character is being sold at a slave market, and one of the other slaves would have been Django.
Okay.
Sadly, it didn't happen, but it would have been really kind of cool to think that, you know, Django appears in the same world as, you know, the Man with the Iron Fist, which itself is just like one big homage to Shaw Brothers movies. And there was a comic book which followed this called Django Meets Zorro, which I would also kind of like to see made into a film. But
it seems to be in the list, though.
Is it?
Yeah, it's there's a pre-production. It says pre-production, so.
I will believe that when I see it. The same way that I've been holding out for Kill Bill 3 for God knows how many years now. So
yeah.
How did you find Samuel Jackson's performance in this? Because I think he just acts everyone off the screen apart from obviously Christoph Waltz.
I don't Samuel L. Jackson's character was a real mystery. I think it was so random. Like, he just pops up and is like, is he a slave? Is he not? What is he?
Well, he was Stephen's a house Negro, which is basically would have been like a trusted slave, and they would wear actual clothes, and they would get to live in the house, and they would be very sort of trusted. And you can see like examples of this. I mean, Lincoln had his own personal slave who used to ride a horse beside him. So there are examples of this throughout, and they make mention of this throughout the film, of the different sort of slaves. Slaves who work out in the field, and you've got the fighters, and you've got what Broomhilda was originally. She was she would work like in a maid in the house, but because she's been scarred up, she's now a comfort Negro, as Candy calls her. So she's just there for entertaining guests. But it's Samuel Jackson originally had been penciled in to play the role of Django, but because Tarantino took so long to make it, as he remarked, he's sort of like, "Oh, you took so long to make it. Now I'm too old to play Django, and now I'm the worst black guy in this movie." And it's fun as well, the fact he's like goes from being supporting villain to main villain here. But his performance is just off the rails. It's something else, this performance he gives here. It's just like so much in like the body movements and the facial expressions.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but it's very it's very entertaining. I think the whole like how Samuel L. Jackson's like how he's transformed into this character, even like how his character looks. There's this very, very, I don't know if it's an unsettling feeling or just, because there's so many close-ups of his face and you just see like these little changes.
Yeah.
And I think that in that sense it's pretty cool. But his character is way like wild. Like right from the start he's already like rude and he's
oh yeah, the French like, why is he on a horse? It's just like he's constantly questioning things, so you can tell his status on the plantation just by the fact that he like can also be, he's like considered like on the same level as any of the other white characters on this plantation. The fact that he questions things constantly, he speaks out of turn, he doesn't have to like play a role as such. He's like very clearly like one of the right hand man on this ranch. So, but on the question of performances, what did you think of the two Tarantino performances that we get here? In the Tarantino acting masterclass, as he plays both a tracker who gets blown up, and he also plays one of the bagheads.
Not really a whole lot to say about it.
No?
I remember noticing it when he was there, and then after that I forgot. I forgot that he was in there. In the process of a few days, I forgot. So,
I only noticed that he was one of the regulators this time round watching it. I've never noticed it before. And he's like the guy who's sort of like, the bag idea was a real nice idea.
But that's the thing.
Yeah,
that's the thing is Django has a lot of like little roles in it, from what I remember. Like there were a lot of like little cameos from different people, and I can't remember who's in there anymore. But I think I remember seeing like so many familiar faces. I think one of the bagheads was Jonah Hill.
Yeah.
And I can't remember any of the other ones, but yeah, obviously Zoe Bell was there. We were able to see that, and but there was so many like little. And the Wolf Creek guy, John Jarrett.
Who's John Jarrett in it?
He had this role as it was a cameo role where he was with some other dude with a horse. I recognize him because he has such the most distinct. He has the most like. His voice is so like it's so easy to separate, especially when he laughs.
Yeah.
And he plays it was the scene where he was in the Tarantino scene, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, because Tarantino played, it was like one of those employees, like mining company employees.
Yeah.
So it was there.
Oh, yeah, so he was. Yes, that's the thing, because, you can see it. When you look at the screen catch, you can see it really, really clearly, because it's in his face. The problem is, because he's blonde. He's like that ash blonde in there. But then again, he's a master of disguise, because we watch him in Rogue, and he's like this bespectacled family man. It's sort of like, you're just a master of disguise, John Jarrett. But, oh my god, he terrifies the hell out of me in Wolf Creek.
But I think it's just who I think he just really like, it's that laugh. I seriously think it's that laugh, and then the sudden, like, he has that ability to suddenly like be serious and then suddenly be like really over the top type of thing. And because he can do that switch so well, it really like, I think he really like is very, very scary, because you have this very unbalanced type of character. But yeah, I mean, to me, I think that the series itself is thanks to the fact that he still comes back to reprise that role, that it works. Because if not, I don't know if it would have worked.
It's hard to see anyone else in that role. It's certain, because the role of his role in sort of Wolf Creek, where he's just such a grimy sort of outback sort of guy, that it's hard to see. It is hard to see anyone else in that role, especially because he just embodies it so much. It's like when you try to have like anyone other than Kane Hodder play Jason, or if Robert Englund's not playing Freddy.
Yeah,
you kind of know that something's not right here. It's not my slasher. So that's cool. Well, you do learn something new every day. It's not my favourite. For some reason, I actually enjoyed this viewing more than I've done on previous viewings, so I don't know if I was just in a good mood or something, but for some reason it just worked for me this evening. And maybe I was just in the mood to see just like really over-the-top shootouts and things. So.
Definitely could be it. But, I mean, I think that Tarantino movies in general, it's very reliant on how you feel.
Yeah.
As with a lot of other movies. But I mean, like, Tarantino-wise, I always have this dread going in because of the length. And I get really, like, scared about how it's going to turn out. Because for me, it's like Tarantino movies have been kind of like a good and bad experience.
Yeah.
So I'm always a little bit hesitant on how to go into something like this. And, but, I mean, there are some good parts about this, and for sure. And I think that when you go back and look at it, like, probably if I watch it a second time, maybe I probably might like it a little bit more. Maybe after go and watch a few more Westerns and then come back, I might have some sort of appreciation for it a little bit more.
I think you just need to watch the right Westerns, because I mean, something like this, if I wanted to see something else like it, I would something like The Wild Bunch, watch the original Django, any of like the Sergio Corbucci westerns, like they're really sort of like dark and grimy, like this film is. Things like Bone Tomahawk.
Yeah, Bone Tomahawk. That one's decent.
And just to see, because looking at the Wikipedia, I mean, it made a huge amount of people's like best movies of 2012 list, and I was just seeing what else came out that year, and it wasn't particularly great. Because we had like The Avengers and Skyfall and Dark Knight Rises and the first Hobbit movie, and then Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2, because we're all thrilled to rush out and see that one. No wonder it made quite a lot of people's top movie lists that year. So, but that brings us to the end of tonight's episode. Thank you as always for listening. Unless you got anything else you want to add, Kim?
Well, I think that if as I was doing this, I think that if you were like, we usually think about, some further viewing, I think that a really interesting movie to pair with this one might be last year's Antebellum. I don't know if you've seen it.
Oh, yeah. I've not seen it. I was going to watch it, but I just didn't get around to watching it yet, so...
Yeah, I watched it a few months ago, and when I was watching this, I had this, like, really interesting type of feeling that it would have been really nice to pair with it, because Antebellum is along the same lines of movies, but it has this very kind of interesting type of twist to it, which I think is executed fairly well. Okay. So it's it's definitely one that I'd say would work really well with this one.
Fantastic. Yeah, it was a good chat. Definitely a good chat. I need to watch it. As I said, it's because it looks really interesting, especially with that dual timelines pitch on it. So I'm really kind of interested to check that one out. So hopefully it will filter through and I will be able to check it out. So, but where are we going next, Kim? Which I think is kind of obvious, but
we just talked about it before. Yeah, we're going to 2015's Hateful Eight, another Western, also incredibly long. I remember it being like 2.5 hours or something like that. Almost 3 hours, actually. Intermission. Almost 3 hours.
Yes, another Western from Tarantino, this time giving us a homage to The Thing in many places, as a group of strangers try to figure out who the enemy within is. But, yes, we get to talk more about the West genre. How exciting. If you haven't done already, please do hit the like and subscribe button wherever you happen to be listening to us, and maybe leave us a review, as it all helps raise the profile of the show. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and we're on Instagram as well. And you can check out our blog, which is moviesandtpodcast.wordpress.com, which has got all our archive of episodes from all our previous season, as well as, most excitingly, our Friday Film Club, where every Friday myself and Kim both pick a film to highlight. Sometimes it's a theme, sometimes it's not. Either way, it's a chance for us to talk about more of the films that we love. But thank you as always for listening. Thanks to my co-host Kim, and we'll be back next time to talk about The Hateful Eight.